Hi, welcome to Feed Your Soul. I am Melinda, and this is our Torah study. We are, I forget, on week 6 or 7, and we are in Genesis 28. Vayetze is the name of this week's portion. This is a series that is designed to help Christians, followers of Jesus, know the foundations of our faith better than we do. So this is our portion, Vayetze, meaning and he went. And it's from Genesis 28 through the very beginning of 32. We'll also look at Joshua 24, some verses in that chapter, and then also some selected verses from John 10 in the New Testament. So let's get started. Genesis 28:10. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he came to a certain place and stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord your God, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at first. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I may come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And all of you, and of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. So if you remember, Jacob had left his parents, Isaac and Rebekah, to really flee Esau, who was angry because he didn't get the blessing. And there's a whole interesting backstory as to why Esau was not going to get the firstborn blessing, or the blessing from Abraham either. So if you didn't see last week's video, definitely check that out. But Jacob is on his way actually to look for a wife. And here he meets God in Bethel. Literally means house of God. Bet is the word for house, and El is a shortened word for Elohim. And we see here just like a nod to the eternal principle of giving a tenth to the Lord, a tithe, right? So even before there was a Levitical priesthood, we were still seeing this practice of a tenth to be set aside for God with the priesthood that existed before that. So again, that's another theme that you can see us being able to pull out throughout these portions. Priesthood, blessing, these threads that go all the way through the whole Bible from beginning, even Old Testament through the New Testament. So Jacob's ladder, Jacob is having a dream, a vision, and angels are coming and going from heaven. And the promise to Jacob is reinforced, the one that was made to Abraham about the numerous descendants, right? And was reinforced to Isaac and now Jacob. And Jacob believes God is in this place. There's lots of conjecture out there about what the site of Bethel is. Like, I've heard some people talk about that maybe it was the gate to the original Garden of Eden. And this is really a place that angels are able to come and go from heaven. It's all interesting to think of and wonder about, but we don't know. There's not really any overt mentions of Bethel in the New Testament. But several things happen here in the book of Genesis and a little later on in Judges, I believe. And it's a mystery, really. But there seems to be something supernatural connected with this place. And Jacob names it the house of God, Bet-El. Okay, Genesis 29. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. And Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" They said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And he said, "We know him." And they said, "We know him." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" They said, "It is well. And see, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now, as soon as Jacob saw the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother, then kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all of these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. So we have Rachel that Jacob sees for the first time. She's a shepherdess, which is pretty cool, right? Because Jacob is a shepherd. And she is of his mother's family, which is the idea. He's looking for his kinsman. He wants to marry in the same line, the people of God. Yes, they are first cousins, which feels strange in our modern lifestyle, our Western modern lifestyle, but it was not strange for the time at all. And he kissed Rachel, but you'll see next that it wasn't, we might get this idea of a kiss. It was a greeting, right? A Middle Eastern and ancient Near East greeting is to kiss. Men kissed men like this, cheek, even on the mouth. It wasn't a strange thing. So the whole kissing thing wasn't like he accosted her. And Jacob was living there, working there, stayed there for a month. And we pick up in verse 15. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. And Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of that place and made a feast. But in the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "It is not done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give to you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved her more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years. So a lot went on here. Uh, we have two young women. We have Rachel and we have Leah. And there is a lot of commentary out there on what this whole section of scripture means. So we know that Jacob and Esau were twins. There is some commentary and some rabbinic commentary out there that also Leah and Rachel were twins as well. And that there was this idea that Leah would have married Esau. That was like the thought while they were growing up, and that Rachel would marry Jacob. But Esau, being the older of the men, the twins, turned out to be not a righteous man, and Leah was sad. Right. So this is all kind of like rabbinic commentary, extra biblical sources. And so it's part of the commentary about her eyes being weak. There's a few ideas about what it meant that Leah's eyes were weak. Some commentary says it talks about her appearance. Others say that it was actually she was sad, that she had sad eyes because she was going to have to marry Esau. So whatever the reason, Laban was not going to give his younger daughter in marriage first, and but he didn't do it honestly. So he had a party, waited until I'm sure there was much alcohol consumed, and then that is when Leah was presented, and I guess it's dark without electric lights, and things happened, and Jacob consummated his marriage to the wrong daughter, or the wrong daughter in his mind. But then, after discussing it with his new father-in-law, that he was also going to take Rachel as a wife, but needed to work another 7 years. So this sets up the girls to be at odds with one another. But I wanted to point out something that Laban says, that this is not done in our country, right? We don't give the younger daughter before the older. And it's, you always wonder, was this an actual commandment? Was this just what they did in Haran? I was watching another commentary, a teaching on this Torah portion from, I want to say it was Kingdom in Context, and it gave me some insight on to where to look to find some what is he talking about? That it's not right to give the younger before the older. And actually, in Jubilees, which is an extra biblical book, it is in at least one canon. It was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. So much of it gives some backstory to what's going on in Genesis. And it's actually said to be, the book claims to be the revelation given from God to the angels to Moses on the mountain, that this was the actual book given. So it's written in from an angel's point of view, as if they are the ones speaking. So just, you'll have to pick that up here. Okay, so in Jubilees 28, verse 6, Laban said to Jacob, so this is Laban speaking, "It is not done that way in our country. We do not give the younger before the elder." The quotes end, and now this is the angel speaking. "And it is not right to do this, for thus it is ordained and written in the heavenly tablets, that no one should give his younger daughter before the elder, but the elder one is given first, and after her the younger. The man who does so will have guilt placed against him in heaven, and none is righteous that does this thing, for this deed is evil before Yah, or Jehovah." Command the children of Israel that they do not do this thing. Let them neither take nor give the younger before they have given the elder, for it is very wicked. The only other allusion to this idea is in Genesis 21:9, where it talks about the command of daughters. Just that. So when you have time, flip over to Exodus 21:9, read that section. Depends on the translation you have, because some of the translations do leave out the word command. But it is in the Hebrew, there is this command. Some of the translations say custom. There's a command or custom of the daughters, and that's it. So it really seems like they're referring to this section in Jubilees. What else is the command of daughters, right? So just an interesting little rabbit trail aside as we move through our portion. Okay, so here are the kids, right? The next generation. And we have Jacob and Esau over here, and then Rachel and Leah. And to just understand the idea of arranged marriages and how I find the story about Leah being intended to be betrothed to Esau, and Rachel being intended to be betrothed to Jacob being plausible, whether they're twins or not, whether the girls are twins or not, because of this reference in Jubilees that the older should be married first, and it's just that's the custom, that or the commandment. But Esau winds up not being a good match, already has taken a few wives. This is Laban's chance. Let's get Leah married off to a more righteous man. So I don't think it at all excuses the way Laban went about it. And we see more about his character as the portion goes on. But I don't think Laban made this up off the top of his head. So Genesis 29:31, when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb. But Rachel was barren, and Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. Again, she conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, this time I will praise the Lord. For therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased childbearing. When Rachel saw that she had bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel and said, am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of your womb? Then she said, here is my servant Bilhah. Go into her, that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Jacob said, God has judged me, and has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed. So she called his name Naphtali. So we already see a pattern of behavior here, mimicking actually Abraham, right? Maybe taking things into your own hands, pulling in even more wives. We tend to really want what we want in life, don't we? And sometimes the ways we go about trying to arrange what we want isn't really the best for everyone involved, but this is what was done. So we have a third wife here, and we'll see that we even wind up with a fourth. But just pointing out that Rachel is saying, take Bilhah, right? But that this son would be Rachel's. So even though this handmaid is kind of taken as a wife, she is still not of full wife privileges. And then Leah saw that she had ceased childbearing and took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come." So she has called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." So she called his name Asher. In the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came home from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he lay with her that night, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband." So she called his name Issachar, and Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him six sons." So she called his name Zebulun. Afterward, she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. And then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she called his name Joseph, saying, "May the Lord add to me another son." So a lot went on in that section, right? We have a lot of kids born, sons born, which we'll talk about their names in a moment. But before we do, mandrakes, right? This is always an interesting section of scripture to me. And if you are a Harry Potter fan, you know of mandrakes from that movie. And do you remember what happened when the mandrakes were pulled out of the pots when they were being repotted? They screamed. And if you heard their scream, you would die. So this is an actual um, folklore. This is what people believed would happen if you picked mandrakes that were actually very good for fertility, but if you picked them, you could die. So notice Leah's son, Reuben, it was right, found the mandrakes lying in a field. He did not pick them because if he picked them, he would have apparently died. But Rachel was willing to give up her night. Apparently, there was a schedule on how you share one husband between two wives or four wives at this point. And she was selling apparently her night with her husband for these mandrakes to help with fertility because that's what they're known for. Fertility and a few other things. Whether they actually have medicinal properties for women's health or not, I'm not sure, but they're still looked upon as a medicinal plant, mandrakes. So the 12 sons of Jacob, right? So this is the section in which we meet 11 of the 12 sons, and their names all have meaning. And I thought we'd just look at them here. Reuben, who's the firstborn, and to Leah, behold a son. And Simeon is God hears, literally, and he's a Shim, right? So if you look at the Hebrew there, and we've done a lot of helpful Hebrew to kind of learn some root words. If you haven't seen them, check out the videos in that playlist, the helpful Hebrew playlist. But Shimeon is how we would pronounce closer. That's, I'm sure, not right, but it's closer to how we would pronounce Simeon. So you can hear that Shim word, Shema, means hear and obey. Shema. So you can hear that in the Hebrew. Levi, the third son, joined. It's really Levi. Judah or Yehuda is let God be praised. Yehuda, you can hear the Yehovah in there. when you say it in Hebrew. Dan, judge. Naphtali, my wrestling, means that just literally my wrestling. Gad is good fortune. Asher literally just means happy. Issachar, that's a yes sound, yes, Yissachar is really Yissachar. He will bring reward. Zebulun, dwelling. And then we have Joseph, which a closer pronunciation would be Yosef. And may God add. And then there is a 12th son that has not been born yet, and his name will be Benjamin or Benjamin, who is son of my right hand. But that's actually not his original name. His father renames him. And we'll talk about that when we get there. But Benjamin's the youngest and has not been born yet. So let's pick up the narration in Genesis 30:25. As soon as Rachel had born Joseph, I wanted to say Joseph, it's the Hebrew is stuck in my head. As soon as Rachel had born Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served, that I may go, for you know that the service I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now when shall I provide for my own household also?" He said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep, every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later. When you come to look into my wages with you, everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted as stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day, Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and the female goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob pastured the rest of the flock. So keep in mind that line about divination, right? Because it's going to speak, we're going to talk about that later, that Laban seems to be dealing with some things that aren't of God, right? But then look at him. We see his character with he agrees to this agreement with Jacob and then goes ahead and actually removes the lambs and goats that would have been the ones that would eventually become Jacob's, and sends them to his son. So he's not being honest. He changes his wages, and we'll see what Jacob winds up doing. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the whites of the sticks. And he set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks. And so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks towards the striped and all the black in the flock of Laban. And he put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants and male servants, and camels and donkeys. So depending on what translation you read, that can sound strange, and it can sound like divination in and of itself, like he's laying these things out and then kind of magically having the flock come out striped or spotted. But um, he's a very experienced shepherd and knows how to do selective breeding. And some of what was written there in that section was like they tended to mate when they were coming to drink, and the stronger ones would be able to negotiate the sticks and be able to breed there. Um, and but the weaker ones were not able to like breed in and around the sticks, right? There also seemed to be other things in play with how he was helping them have specific spotting or coloring on their wool. But Jacob knows what he's doing. He is experienced, and God blesses his efforts because he knows he's being taken advantage of. And now Jacob heard the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's. And from what was our father's, he has gained all this wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred. I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all of my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times, but God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock from your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in a dream, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see. All the goats that mate the flocks are striped, spotted, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing for you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise and go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. So those are some strong words from the daughters, from Leah and Rachel, right? They're saying, Laban sold us for your work. Not that they were given in marriage, but that they were sold. And that's what they're feeling like right now. So they're ready to go, leaving their father's house. So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels, and he drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan, to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob tricked Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him and pursued him for 7 days and followed close after him into the country of Gilead. But God came to Laban, the Aramean, in a dream by night and said to him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me and did not tell me so that I might have sent you away with myrrh and songs, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is my power, it is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And now you have gone away because you have longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have said that is yours and take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So household gods, we're going to talk about those in a moment. They're actually called teraphim. And I want you to think about, do we know someone named Terah? Yeah. So verse 33, Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them. And when he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's, now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, let my lord not be angry that I cannot arise before you, for the way of women is upon me. So he searched, but did not find the household gods. Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, what is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all of my goods. What have you found of all your household gods or all your household goods? Set it here before me and my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten of the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts, I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I have served you 14 years for your two daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night. So, intense interaction, some trickery and deceit, and quick thinking on Rachel's part, right? I guess Laban wouldn't get too close if she had said that she was in the way of women, because that's just was known that there was the clean and unclean laws were clearly still in effect, and she had them hidden in the camel in the bags. And the reason that Rachel stole them is a debated one. But like I said before, this household god, the name of these household gods are actually called teraphim. And the thought is that these were made by Terah, Abraham's father. So in some extra biblical narratives, there's the apocalypse of Abraham, and it's also alluded to in, I want to say, Jubilees, and there's another book, Jasher, which I'm not sure how reliable the book of Jasher is, but in those three places, it is talked about how Terah was a worshiper of idols. And it even talks about how he worked for Nimrod as an idol maker. So they're called teraphim, which doesn't seem like it's by accident. Clearly, it sounds like it would be from the name Terah, and there's no real sourcing of this word either. So I'm going with that these are named after their maker, Terah, which gives a whole lot of meaning to what these things are. So there are at least two different kinds, maybe three, referenced in the Bible. When you see household gods, they're all called teraphim in Hebrew. One is very large. So there was this awful practice of beheading a firstborn and keeping his head and maybe even shrinking it through like salting processes, making it smaller and using it as a way of like necromancy to converse with the dead, apparently. What you have pictured here is what they would replace these skulls with when they buried them. They were like made of pottery and shells for eyes to like so they could replace the head in the burial chamber, which oftentimes was in the home underneath the floor. Or there was these, so that was one version of them, these heads that were maybe even like shrunken heads, but they would like leave them in their homes on mantelpieces as ways to be connected to the underworld and be able to speak to the dead and also be able to see kind of what's going on. That the belief was that these would speak back. And then there were other options that didn't require cutting off heads, but they were replicas of the person in some way, some stylized fashion. And so that's these other ones towards the bottom of the screen. So probably the ones towards the bottom of the screen were the ones that Rachel had. But there is even one more reference to a much larger type of teraphim with David. But so there's a God placed in his bed to make it seem like he wasn't there, to trick. It's a whole story. But those are the three references of teraphim that I found in the Bible. But it's really can give you some more insight into the family history here and how important it was that Abraham got away from his father and away from Haran, which is where Laban is right now, right in Haran. So the story was the whole family lived in Ur of the Chaldeans, which was like the southernmost part of Babylon. And they left. Abraham was called out, but they left together, went to Haran. The rest of the family settled there. Abraham knew that he was called to not live there. He left. He left these idolatrous people behind who were at least Terah and Haran were really into the idol worship. And apparently Terah was even making idols, manufacturing them and selling them. So it was pretty important that Abraham left that space, left that influence of his family and the patriarchs in his family. So how does this all tie in to Rachel stealing these teraphim, these household gods, from her father? Well, remember that Laban was into divination. So he utilized these household gods or other things in order to find out things, right? The scriptures clearly say divination. He was not following the God of Abraham. He was following, apparently, the religious practices of Babylon or the other Sumerian cultures, right? So he practiced divination, and there are thoughts out there that Rachel took the gods so that Laban couldn't find out where they were going. We don't know for a fact, though. We do know that Jacob was a man of God and that he would have been instructing his children and his wives, teaching them all about God, right? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob would be the God of Leah and Rachel. So we know that they would have been getting teaching from Jacob. Was Rachel taking these household gods as maybe she was still looking to have more children? Maybe she thought they would watch over her, or there is a decent amount of rabbinic commentary out there that thinks that Rachel took these in order to prevent Laban from using them. So just an interesting aside there. We pick up in verse 43. Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters. The children are my children. The flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do to you this day for these my daughters, or for their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I. Let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Yegar Sahadutha. I haven't said that one out loud in a long time. But Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. Therefore, he named it Gilead. And Mitzvah, for he said, the Lord watches between you and me when we are out of each other's sight. If you oppress my daughters or you take wives besides my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and this pillar, which I have set between me and you. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me to do harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father, Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning, Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren, his daughters, and blessed them. And then Laban departed and returned home. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's camp. So he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Mahanaim. I don't always pronounce these words out loud until I'm on camera. I'll say them in my head, right? Mahanaim. Okay. It was a long portion this week, so thanks for bearing with me with the reading. Laban does invoke the God of Abraham, but it's also the God of Nahor. He wants to keep Jacob on his side, and he'll stay on the other side, and never shall they pass one another to do harm. I think it's, we see a little more of Laban's character here, where he says, these are my children, these are my grandchildren, these are my flocks, when Jacob had worked 20 whole years for everything there. And we just see that Laban is not he's not a very good character. But this portion ends with Jacob running into angels of God. Meleki of Elohim. And we had this in our helpful Hebrew a few weeks ago, where Melech is angel singular, Melechi or Melechim is plural. And we see this phrase come up a lot. These are angels of God. Whenever it's angels of God, angel can mean messenger, prophet, priest, or teacher. But when they're angels of God, they seem to actually be messengers straight from God. And this Torah portion opened with visitation from these messengers of Elohim, these angels of God, and it ends with it as well. And as we'll see in next week's portion, there's a pretty intense exchange with these messengers. And we'll talk more about that then. But there was really this juxtaposition of Laban leaving his parents to go find a wife. He's alone. And he meets these angels on the ladder, right? He gets a visitation from God to confirm the blessing. And then he goes and he gains wealth and he gains wives, and then he's on the way back not alone, with a family, after hearing from God, telling him to go. And again, he's meeting with messengers. So there's just this like mirrored image of something happening here. And we'll talk more about that next week. But I want to go over into Joshua 24 and look at this section there and kind of just see how it connects. So starting in verse 1, Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem and summoned the elders, the heads, the judges, and the officers of Israel. And they presented themselves before God. Before we go any further, this is the book directly after the Torah, Joshua, if you're not familiar, after Deuteronomy. And it talks about the people of God coming into the promised land with under Joshua. Moses has died, right? So this is where we are. So Joshua is coming to the end of his life, and he is talking to the people. So we're going to pick up here in verse 2. And Joshua said to all the people, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, long ago your fathers lived beyond the Euphrates, Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, and they served other gods. Then I took your father Abraham from beyond the river and led him through all the land of Canaan and made his offspring many. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. And I gave Esau the hill country of Seir to possess. But Jacob and his children went down to Egypt. And I sent Moses and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt with what I did in the midst of it. And afterward I brought you out. Now, therefore," skipping down to verse 14, "now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve Jehovah. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve Jehovah, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve Jehovah." Then the people answered, "Far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For it is the Lord our God who brought us and our fathers up from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, and who did those great signs in our sight, and preserved us in all the way that we went, and among all the peoples through whom we have passed. And the Lord drove out before us all the peoples, the Amorites who lived in the land. Therefore, we also will serve the Lord, for he is our God." So this is a verse a lot of us are familiar with. Choose this day whom you will serve. We kind of leave out that middle part about the idols, and then we say, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord," or "we will serve Jehovah." I have a little plaque in my hallway downstairs, these alphabet photography letters that spell out Joshua 24:15. It's what I've prayed over my home. We have chosen who we will serve, and we will serve the Lord. But just remember the backstory there in that verse. It specifically calls out Terah, or Abraham's father, for being an idol worshiper. And apparently he was an idol manufacturer, according to some sources. So it's important. The legacy we leave, which is something we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. What do we want to pass down to our children? The service of the Lord, or the service of false things? And if you read in Jubilees, you'll see how Abraham tells Terah, Abram at the time, that these idols they're mute. They can't do anything. Why do you serve them? What is it that we serve, right? What are we bowing down to in our lives? What mute idols have we made bigger than they should be in our lives? I think it's always good. It's always good to be looking at what is our priority, right? Have we chosen this day who we will serve? And are we walking that out? Something I like to remind myself. And I find it really fascinating, some of this backstory that I didn't intend as I was going to do these Torah portions, that we would be pulling in so much conversation or backstory from these extra biblical texts, but uh, it just really connects so interestingly. And I think it really adds to some of the understanding. So I hope it doesn't make it too complicated or confusing. If anything doesn't seem clear, let me know and we can talk about it further and kind of work it out in the comments. So we're going to head with saying, having said that, we are going to move over to the New Testament in the book of John, John 10, starting with verse 10. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So Jesus again said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and they know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock and one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. Our shepherd. This analogy, the story that Jesus, Yeshua, tells about who he is, about being the shepherd, that he knows his sheep and that they know him, they know his voice, and he is willing to lay his life down for them. It's just such a beautiful picture. And since we were talking about so much about sheep today and flocks and shepherding, and I thought it fit well. Jacob and Rachel, they were shepherds and shepherdesses, and they took good care of their sheep, right? Jacob was good at what he did. And Jesus is our shepherd. He is there to he was the one to choose to lay his life down for us, right? And that's what a good shepherd would do, that he wouldn't run from the enemy and leave his sheep open to attack, but that he would lay down his own life if necessary for his sheep. And I just want to remember that it's so beautiful, right? That we are his sheep. He knows us and we know him. We know his voice. And to remember that in your walk, that you know your shepherd's voice. And if you don't think that you know his voice, the more time you spend in his word, in the word of the Father, the better you will know your shepherd. And I thought it interesting that I forget what verse is it. Should we look back? In verse 16, it talks about that Yeshua has other sheep not of this fold, and he needs to bring them in also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock and one shepherd. Other sheep that are not of that fold, right? He's talking about others, the nations, the the Gentiles who wouldn't really stay Gentiles, right? He said there will be one shepherd and one flock. And I'm just asking, as we're going through carefully, line by line, through the whole first 5 books of the Bible, that you stick with me and give it a chance to really see some of these themes. The priesthood being one of them, going all the way back to Adam. And also this idea of one people with one God, with such a continuity that really, when I began seeing these themes in the Bible, it really changed my faith and increased my faith, helped me feel so much more confident in speaking about the Bible, because it's not some cut up book that some parts pertain here to these people and other parts pertain over here. Certainly there were changes that came with Jesus's death and resurrection, and the demolishing of the temple and the changing of the priesthood. That doesn't mean that there was a change in what is good and right in the eyes of God. So some people might push back at that. There's a lot of people out there who have been raised with the idea that the Old Testament, especially what many call the Law of Moses, were just for the Jews, just for Israel. I am submitting to you as a topic for discussion that that's not true, because Jesus says right here that he has one flock and there's one shepherd, right, of that flock. And all you'll see as we keep going, God says through the Torah that there is one law for Israel and the people who join her. So what is this flock? What are the expectations of this flock, right? We're going to discuss that, and we're going to discuss it over the next 11 months. And I will appreciate the feedback, right? If you are confused or have doubts or concerns or questions about something we bring up that doesn't seem to add up, bring it up in the comments. Let's talk it out, because this is like near and dear to me, the subject of one flock with one shepherd. So if you have thoughts on it, share them in the comments. And other than that, we didn't have a helpful Hebrew this week because it was Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving. I don't think I have an end screen. I try to remember to have an end screen that reminds you to like and subscribe and share and comment. The more you interact, you can even dislike this video. It's the more interaction that is had with this video, the further it gets shared, so others can be exposed to some of this in-depth teaching in our foundation in the first 5 books of the Bible. So thank you for watching. Thank you for interacting and sharing. And I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. I just had a full house, 25, 26 people, I think, 27 maybe. And we didn't have enough places to sit, but there was a ton of food, and I just love having a full house. So I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and if nothing else, had time to remember to be thankful to the God who provides, and have a good Sabbath, a restful Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom, and I will see you next time.